Welcome to the Coach Doctor podcast, a podcast where we discuss aspects of sports coaching from grassroots to grandstands. I'm your host, James Barkell, and on this podcast, we hear from academics who research coaching. We talk to coaches on the front line from development levels through to professional coaches, and we discuss other elements of successful sporting programs with experts and practitioners from a range of sports science fields, motivational psychology, strength and conditioning, and many other elements required for successful performance. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the Coach Doctor, you can visit our website, thecoachdoctor.com.au, and learn more about our services, or follow me on Instagram at thecoachdr or Twitter at James_Barkell for more regular information. Before I start the episode, I just wanted to let all the coaches and athletes out there know about a special deal that we've got going with Elite Performance Journals. EPJ make both coaches' notepads ideal for developing session plans and for reviewing or reflecting on sessions. And for athletes looking for that extra edge, they also have an Elite Athlete Journal designed around specific needs of up-and-coming professional athletes. For any listeners of the Coach Doctor podcast, you can receive 20% off on any of their products by simply going to eliteperformancejournal.com, check out all of their products, and when you check out, use the code COACHDOCTOR, all one word and lowercase, for a special 20% discount. Right, today's guest on the podcast is Rugby Union fullback Mike Brown. Mike has 72 appearances for England and 351 appearances for his former premiership club Harlequins, as well as a handful of games for the Newcastle Falcons. Most recently, Mike represented and captained the Barbarians in a series of games coached by Crusaders coach Scott Robertson. Without sounding rude, Mike is in the twilight of his career and has started developing a plan for life after rugby, and it's an aspect that he's very passionate about and feels could be done better by sports organisations. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate it.
Mike, there's no doubting your ability on the rugby pitch. In my opinion, you've been one of the best fullbacks in world rugby in your time with England. And without sounding rude, how much longer are you hoping to be playing rugby for?
Yeah, do you know what? It's hard to say, to be honest. I mean, at the moment, I'm not playing at all because I'm not sure how much you're aware of the situation of English rugby at the moment. So the salary cap dropped for every club by $1 million. So unfortunately, my playing contract at Newcastle ended kind of at the wrong time, along with a number of other players, because there's just no room for new players going into clubs really with that salary cap dropping by $1 million. So I think there was like 80 to 100 players out of contract and nowhere to go. And then added to that, quarter way through the season, Worcester and Wasps unfortunately folded with their financial issues. So then that flooded the market with even more players. So, with those two things, it's not great for someone like me who doesn't have a club. But, physically and mentally still would want to and able to play if the right opportunity came, which kind of aligned with family, my transition stuff, and also at this point in my career, what I'd get enjoyment from. Those three things would be really important. So it's not like I'm just sat here hanging on, but I'm available if the right opportunity came along. But with that, I'm moving on with my transition stuff, which I'd started anyway. That's kind of been accelerated with what's happened. But yeah, like I said, it's not like I'm sat here hanging on and hope. I'm fully aware of the situation and fully aware of my age will play a part, unfortunately, in some people's thinking. Not that I would agree. And it was nice to play with the Barbarians recently, actually. And you have some apprehensions going in after, I think it was about 7 months since I'd played, and I'd only done 2 training sessions with a Nat 2 team. So that's 3 leagues below premiership level. I'd only done 2 sessions with the Nat 2 team, which actually was surprisingly a really good standard and a good bunch of lads down at Worthing Rugby Club. So I have to give them a shout, but allow me to join their session. But, it was great at being a bit nervous of whether I could still do it, to actually show that I could, still really contribute on the pitch, and really loved it, being able to express myself and enjoy playing with amazing players like Damien McKenzie, Luther Burrell, Hogarth, people like that, but also play with a number of guys actually that are in the same position as me and didn't have clubs, mainly from Wasps and Worcester, who unfortunately had their contracts stopped immediately because of those clubs folding. But off the back of those Barbarians games, it's been great to kind of see them slowly get contracts at other clubs. So that's been nice to see, to be fair. But yeah, it was just great to get back out there for 2 games. And we played 2 games in 3 days, which I hadn't done since I was about 18. So I can't imagine many 37-year-olds with who haven't been around professional environment for 7 months would be able to play 2 games in 3 days. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, it's a good effort, mate. That's a very good effort.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was good. It was good, and we ended our last game with a last minute drop goal win, which is it was great. But on and off the field, it was really enjoyable. Probably one of the best weeks in my rugby career. So yeah, loved it.
Yeah, what made it so enjoyable for you?
Yeah, I think it's hard to pin down, but I just think so I had high expectations and held Scott Robertson in high regard before coming in. Obviously, he leads one of the most successful clubs in world rugby, and you see the clips of him breakdancing and how that environment that they just sustained for however many years with whatever coach they've got, how they managed to do that. It must be special there. So going in, I held him in high regard anyway, but he exceeded my expectations even further. So I think him being there helped with that, with the experience that I got, how he connected everyone, how he connected himself with other people, and the environment he kind of created in such a short space of time. I think the enjoyment off the field, but also the understanding that playing for the Barbarians, we expect to win as well. So you had both sides of it. Everyone just thinks you go there for a jolly, which you have that social side, but it's very much expected that you flick the switch when it's time to switch on and train or you're in a meeting or you're playing. So there was still both sides of it. The fact Scott had a big emphasis on being brave and just allowing you to flourish and put what you're about on the field. I enjoyed there's just no expectations to be a certain way and no egos in the room, and which I'm sure is a lot easier when you're only meeting up for a couple of weeks or whatever, and things like that. But yeah, it was just loved it, and we just went out there and we enjoyed off the field stuff, but we enjoyed each other's company with that, and had loads of fun. But also we had loads of fun on the field in the serious stuff. We ripped in, we went through it with physical, but also we did the nice stuff, chucking the ball around. Got to play with great players like I mentioned before. So just loved it.
Is Scott a very technical coach, or is it more of that personable stuff, especially in that short program like that with the Barbarians? Is it more of that?
Yeah, with that, look, you could see the tactical and technical stuff coming out in little bits, but obviously with that short amount of time, it's about getting everyone connected and working together as a team, and creating that environment where you feel so comfortable straight away. It was almost like, with him especially, it's almost like I'd known him for years. Like, it was weird, and that was it within a couple of hours. And it's almost like he created that for everyone else as well, like create that team environment straight away, and all those buzzwords of belonging, which you would have heard of, and psychological safety and connection and things like that. He seemed to be able to do all that, and then just speaking to him one-on-one, because obviously with what I'm doing, I was keen to kind of catch him a few times one-on-one in between the social aspects of things, and it just, from chatting to him, that it was a real eye-opener into the awareness he has of himself, and he obviously has a lot of things naturally in his personality that allows him to be the way he is, but also it was clear that he'd worked on a lot of things through psychological what's the test, like MBTI sort of stuff. I can't remember what the word is now. The psychometric testing, that sort of thing. That he had big awareness of himself, and he'd gone away and worked on that to understand that. He had awareness of other people and other personalities and how to get the best out of them, because he had awareness of himself, he understood kind of the people he needed around him, I guess in his coaching team and staff, to pick up maybe the gaps that he may have or find more difficult, but also complement what he brings. So that was a real eye opener, because obviously most people will think with his personality, he probably just has it. But it was very clear that he'd gone away and consciously worked and explored all that stuff as well.
So I'm just going to move back a little bit to the end of your time at Harlequins. You'd played over 350 games for the club, and then you moved to the Newcastle Falcons. How was that change after such a long time at one club? I mean, it's almost like losing your family and moving to a completely different family.
Yeah, it was obviously heartbreaking at the time. I never thought I'd leave Quins. I was so emotionally connected with the place. Like, I loved the place. It was my home. You know, I'd been there my whole adult life. Like, I joined there when I was 18, worked all the way through, been with certain players all the way through. That was like my home. You know, I took everything there so personally, in terms of when we lost, stuff that would happen around the environment. You know, if I felt like I hadn't performed or let the team down, like, I took all that so personally because I was so emotionally connected with the place, and I never thought I'd leave. Like, you know, originally when I started this transition work, it would have been to go into that environment off the field and continue what I'd done as a player, as a in an off-field role, you know, because I was so connected to the place. So that was heartbreaking, and kind of the way it came about and stuff like that, which, you know, I've spoken about before. So wouldn't want to talk about that too much now, and probably more focus on the positives, because there's a lot of positives that I take from being lucky enough to play for such a prestigious club with so much history. And when I first joined Harlequins in the academy, I wanted to make sure, it was that old saying of leaving the shirt in a better place, that I wasn't like thinking like that, but I wanted to make sure I maximised the opportunity, this amazing opportunity I had, as much as possible. And when I kind of, my time finished there, make sure I'd given it everything and played the way I would want a person to play in that shirt if I was a fan watching in the stadium. Like, show that commitment, that passion, you know, everything great about that shirt, show it in my commitment and passion. So hopefully I've managed to do that, but it was heartbreaking at the time. But I think actually having to move away and then spend a year somewhere else will be gold dust for my next career, because if I want to stay in elite sport in kind of that leadership role off the field, I now have an understanding of having to move clubs, even though it was still the same country. Newcastle felt like a different world. It was, you know, it's like 5 hours from where we live, away from friends and family. So it's a big move for us. You know, we're both, me and my wife are both from this area, so of London. So it's a big move for us, but I've experienced that now. So if I'm leading people that need to move, I understand what they're going through and can offer support and guidance on that. The other end of the spectrum to Quins, in terms of budget, in terms of stadium, facilities, infrastructure, ownership, leadership, you know, everything really. So yeah, and you know, Quins at the top and Newcastle bottom, and that shows in, you know, league positions as well. So that was a good eye opener to that, and seeing that different side. So I've kind of been through both ends of the scale, and it was a great understanding of being good. You know, how good you have to be at the stuff that doesn't cost budget, if you want to be successful. I think it was a big eye opener. Yeah, and it was good when you're in one place for such a long period of time. You kind of get pigeonholed as a certain person, certain way, and it was kind of nice to kind of break out of that and start fresh in a new environment, and kind of work on, you know, making new connections, showing a different side of my personality, which is tough to do when you've been somewhere for like 19 years and you just kind of slot into the same sort of, you know, box, hole, whatever. So that was that was a good thing. So I enjoyed that, showing a different side of myself, work on some different sides of leadership and apply certain things. So enjoyed that, but it was tough going. It was tough going up there.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've identified plenty of positives out of the move, and I guess that takes me on to the next question, and we're starting to look at that transition, like you've mentioned a couple of times. So, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I'm always really impressed with the level of activity that you post around your own learning and your own development as a person professionally outside of the game. Do you think there's enough emphasis on transitioning into retirement and a professional career within professional sporting organisations?
I think it's getting there now, definitely. Whether the support and guidance of helping those athletes, find something, develop themselves, learn when they're in sporting environments, but also when they leave, how much aftercare is there? Probably isn't where it needs to be yet, or I don't think it is. So that's still big work on. It's so big, like it's such a big thing in sport, and I don't think anyone's kind of nailed it completely yet. Especially the aftercare thing. I think how much aftercare there is for athletes. Continue that support and guidance when they're out of the club environment. Who's looking after them? Who's checking in? Who's, I guess, offering that support and guidance to make sure they're on the right path and got the right goals and values and know where they're heading. Because it's so hard to kind of nail that down, what pathway you're on, where are you heading, how to, be open-minded and broad with opportunities and what roles you could take on, but also starting to narrow down on something so you just don't end up all over the place. Is probably the best way to describe it. So for me, like I've just tried to make sure the hardest thing for me starting from the beginning was finding what I wanted to do. I always knew through my career that it would come at some point, and it's important to kind of start doing something, but I never knew what that was, and I couldn't work out what it was, and I never thought I'd go back into anything academic, probably because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm not someone that can just kind of dip in and out of stuff and just try stuff. A bit like my rugby, I need to be fully into something to commit to it, to get the best out of myself and best out of that thing that I'm doing.
Mm.
So then I kind of stumbled across the sporting director role. It was kind of at a time where Quins changed their structure to having an off-field director of rugby, what they call general manager, which is the American term, which is effectively a sporting director, and then on-field coach. So the general manager sits over the top and makes sure all those performance departments are aligned, and you're feeding back to the CEO and the board on that performance side. And then the head coach just solely focuses on the on-field, selection of the team, all that sort of thing, which I'm sure you'll know. Quins changed to that structure. So then that kind of got me kind of interested in it, because I knew I never wanted to be a coach on the field. Didn't interest me at all. The session planning and the grind of coaching, and that didn't interest me. But the strategic side, the kind of leadership, the alignment of everything, the culture, the environment, people development, all that sort of thing interests me more. So I kind of stumbled across that with the change at Quins, and then off the back of that, I started seeing more and more football clubs have this sport and director role pop up, which was still quite new to English football then. I think it was quite well developed in European football, but back in the last few, over the last few years, it's grown in the Premiership, and now I think the Premiership every club has a sporting director, and even some have assistant sporting directors. So that's still quite new. Then I just started researching that, listening to podcasts about sporting directors and what they do, and just interested me more and more. And then I kind of, again, stumbled across the Masters in Sporting Directorship at Manchester Met. That was started to get talked about a lot more, and that's still quite new. We're like the 8th cohort, so that's still quite new qualification. And it kind of took me probably about a year or even more to kind of pluck up the courage to apply for that uni course. I'd never gone to uni. I just finished sixth form college and went straight to the academy. So I hadn't had that uni exposure, and this is a master. So, it's quite a big jump up for me. They accepted me, and like I said, I never thought I'd go back to anything academic. But I'm so glad I did with this, because I just love the challenge. I love the learning. I love little things, from learning how to use a computer again and learning properly, and sitting in classrooms and being able to filter the stuff you need and what you don't need and learn properly, and then also the other side of the people you meet on the course. It's gold dust for me, because a lot of them are in roles in elite sport already. And the big learning I get, and I think it's the same with a lot of people on the course, is when we have discussions about the topics we're talking about, you hear about their experiences, good and bad. So then it's almost like I've been through the experiences myself without having to actually do it, but just hearing their sort of their stories. So that's been amazing. So yeah, that was kind of my journey on the transition stuff. And where I'm at now is the last few months, well, 6 to 8 months of just building up a network, speaking to people across all sports, connecting, getting environments. I guess what you've kind of seen on the LinkedIn stuff to help my learning development. I've applied for another course with the FA, because I was very keen to look at across all sports. That's what motivates me now, and getting out into other sports and seeing if there's roles and opportunities there instead of just rugby. So I've applied for an FA course in talent ID and development leadership. So hopefully I can get accepted onto that, and that will show that I want to apply myself in another sport as well as contribute, because I think there's a lot of transferable stuff. I'm very keen to contribute in another sport, but also learn. So take both sides of that. So hopefully I get on that. And yeah, I think the next thing for me is getting into a role, whether unpaid or paid, and being able to apply what I've learned so far and keep developing on the floor and get that on the floor experience is kind of where I'm at now.
You've played in front of 80,000 people at Twickenham and other stadiums around the world, and played in high pressure situations. All of a sudden, you've taken yourself out of that area where I wouldn't say it's a comfort zone, but it's an area you probably feel comfortable in, and you're confident in your abilities, and you've gone into, like you said, a master's degree where there's academic writing. You probably have to get up and give presentations. There's a whole heap of new things you've got to start doing. Is there an element of fear or an element of nervousness about getting up and putting yourselves in front of all these other people, trying something new for the first time?
Yeah, there's a huge element of, I guess, fear, but worry and imposter syndrome, all those sort of things at the moment. But I'm very much trying to lean into that. I think that's been a very important aspect of my transition. I think I probably didn't do that enough through my rugby career. Like I said, I was so insular and focused on the rugby and getting the best out of myself there. That probably took away from other development with leaning into, leaning out of that comfort zone. So that's what I've been trying to do, getting out of my comfort zone and, taking opportunities to speak, whether it be a presentation with UK Sport or, with I think I did one, a presentation on my journey and my experiences with their leadership and culture kind of department. Sitting on discussion panels again, which was with UK Sport, their PLX conference, which was amazing. Sat on a panel with other brilliant ex-athletes, but also and their equivalent of a sporting director and their a coach developer, which was great learning for me, as well as contributing. For me, who's quite introvert and quite I guess shy at heart person, it's been a big push initially to connect with people that I don't know and meet people and get in environments. That sort of thing doesn't come naturally to me, so that was quite tough to start with. But now I feel very comfortable doing that, and don't mind doing that. Doing podcasts, that sort of thing. If I get on the FA course, that'll be another one, because there'll be people there that are in roles in football, because it's it's a course usually reserved for people in football. So I'll probably be the only one out of football if I'm lucky enough to get on it. So again, that imposter syndrome will come back in. So yeah, going through that all the time. But I think it's good I'm doing that now with my transition, and that'll come again if I get a role, paid or unpaid, because suddenly I'm out of my comfort zone and having to prove myself, apply myself, prove myself, show I can do it, especially if it's paid as well.
Have you got any history in football? Have you played football?
No, not at all. Just at school, I was lucky enough with my family that my dad very much encouraged me to try every single sport. So I played everything, and I loved sport, so that was fine with me. But I think that ultimately helped me with my rugby when I then chose to solely focus on that. But I'm a football fan, like a lot of people in England, so watch that and enjoy that. And I think it's a game that has a lot of transferable stuff from rugby. But saying that, I'm also spending time with UK Sport, who are having a number of sports, big and small, under their umbrella as well. So, but yeah, it'd be great to get into football because obviously, it's so big, and like I said, there's transferable stuff I think I could bring from rugby, but also amazing stuff to learn. It's exciting, it's innovative to some degree. The budget side of it helps. And then there's things like, looking at other rugby people that have come into the sport. Ben Ryan most recently. So I'm sure you're aware of Ben Ryan, who was Fiji Sevens coach, won gold with them. He's a rugby man. He's now got a job as I think his role is head of high performance director at Brentford Football Club. So they're in the Premier League, which is the highest league in football in England, kind of mid-table. There's a number of clubs that sit in the middle. Don't have the highest budget, but good teams sit in the middle. And he's come in to kind of make sure everything from the standard of training pitches to the cameras they use to film their sessions, to the travel, to the infrastructure, to the recovery suite that they're building, to coaching development is of a high performance standard. So everything across the board. And he sits alongside the director of football, who's kind of similar to a sporting director that we were talking about, but he has all the football knowledge. He has the high performance knowledge coming from different sports. They kind of work together, I guess, to get those marginal gains for Brentford, which is important for them when they're sitting in the middle of a table with a number of other teams with not the highest budget, to see if they can, climb higher up the league by doing that. So that sort of role really interests me. And if I said to him when I met up with him not long ago, I said, you're kind of a flag bearer for someone like me, so no pressure, because if he goes well, that's great for me to use him as a great example. So yeah, kind of that sort of thing, interests me.
Yeah, great. So I noticed you've taken a lot of opportunities to visit other sporting organisations outside of rugby. As you mentioned, football, you've done cricket. More recently, I noticed Red Bull car racing. What have been some key learnings that you've taken away from some of those, I guess, visits with other sports that you could, I guess, down the track apply into your own management or sports directorship?
Oh yeah, a big question, because I've been lucky enough to do a few over the last few months. So most recently, Red Bull. So obviously they have unbelievable. It's an unbelievably high performance environment anyway, as you can imagine, and that their budget is massive. The amount of data and analysis they're dealing with during the race, out of race. But one thing that stuck with me was the communication from the people that are taking in all this data to feed back to another guy, who then feeds back to someone like Christian Horner, or the drivers that are on the track. The way they filter out all this data and information they're getting from all these different sides. But one thing that they emphasize with all that going on is how good their communication needs to be, to then feed back to the driver exactly what he needs to do. Because I can imagine with all this information coming in that can get very much lost in how efficient and effective their communication then needs to be, while they're then taking in all this information. So we spoke to the guy that's on the mic to the driver, who has this platform of all this data going on is like mind blowing. And then we also spoke to a guy that's in England at their kind of centre, their development. Also, massive screen, size of a huge room, all this information, other people behind him, feeding him information, from they've got guys in the room that are listening to what other rival drivers are saying to their people to see if they can pick up little cues. And he's getting that fed back to him. He's got the data on the screen being fed to him. He's got people that are picking up little bits of data, specific data being fed to him. And both of them said how effective and efficient their communication needs to be off the back of that. So that was a big learning. Went to Liverpool Academy the other day, and I had a good chat with their academy director, Alex Inglethorpe, who's been there like 10 years. Like, he's well renowned for what he's done there. And we were just talking about the difference between high performance for a first team, which is very much geared towards the weekend and winning, and then what high performance is and the difference for an academy. So in the academy, it's all about individual development. So then, the game on the weekend, it does matter. Like, they're Liverpool, they still want to win, but more often than not, they're going to be a lot stronger than most of the academies. It's not about the winning for them as much. It's about personal development, individual development. So then there's no point in everything geared to high performance for the weekend for their game to win, because it's not about that in the academy. It's about, high performance development, I guess is a different way of putting it, and understand the difference between that and what that looks like, and how they get that. That was good and interesting. And then actually with him, because he'd been through transition, because I think he was a footballer. I don't think he was top level, but he was still at a decent level, and he transitioned out. And just speaking to him about that, because it's great to his perspective and his understanding, and kind of speaking to him about what I could bring to an environment, and probably going away for me to go away and putting down on paper and getting an understanding of what impact I could have on an environment, especially if I go into another sport, which is, it's just great to speak to someone and reflect on things and getting out stuff that's in my head, onto a bit of paper, ready to show what impact I could have if I was given a role. So those are the two most recent ones, I think.
Amazing. Again, you've had some really interesting opportunities to visit some of those organisations. So it must be some great learning. I'm going to move on to some coaching now. With regards to coaching, you've had access to a number of high quality, high level coaches over the years. From your mind, what do you believe makes a great coach?
So I think from all my experiences, what I believe would make a good coach, and I'm not sure if I had it in my experiences completely, is probably, yes, you have to have the understanding of the technical and tactical, which most coaches, especially at the top end, do, and being good with that, and an understanding of higher performance and how you create that high performance environment to get the best out of the team on the weekend. But then on the other side, I feel like there needs to be a balance of understanding the healthy side of the environment and not making it intense 24/7. From my experiences with the Barbarians, I just feel like there's got to be more to these elite sports environments in terms of creating that enjoyment and how powerful that can be, creating responsibility and freedom for players to flourish and really show how good they are on the field. I think a coach now needs to have that holistic view of everything. So yes, the understanding of on the grass and the technical and tactical, but like I was kind of referring to with Scott, that understanding of personalities, how to get the best out of different personalities, awareness of yourself, awareness of everyone around you, getting the right people around you to get the best out of yourself as a coach, but also the best out of them. So you're all complementing each other, and how important that is to get the best out of the team. Creating that and I'm going to use buzzwords here because these are the buzzwords at the moment. Creating belonging, being able to do that, creating that psychological safety, which then leads on to the responsibility and freedom and everything that I've mentioned there. Being able to connect with people quickly. Yeah, I think those sort of things, just having that holistic coaching now is so important, especially with the new feel like they've got a connection with things, the environment, the people leading the environment. They want to feel like they can contribute and are contributing to decisions that are being made, how they're going to play, what they're going to produce on the field, and also want to feel like they've got freedom to do that. And obviously that needs to also fit into, a good culture environment of good values of a team and how everyone aligns to that, and give people, as the coach, make people aware of why these values are going to help the team, but also where they fit into that, I think is important as well. So I think there's a lot to it. And it's easy for me to say because I'm not a coach. And it must be hard. But there's more to it now than just being good technically and tactically on the grass, I think.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, that technical and tactical aspect tends to be very, very important, obviously. But that holistic view that coaches have or should have over, developing a connection with the playing group, and I guess bringing the playing group together and developing a good culture within that group is really important. And you mentioned belonging, and belonging is probably a word that's been linked to Harlequins, because I understand Owen Eastwood, who wrote the book Belonging, ended up at Harlequins. Was he there in your time?
No, so we kind of crossed paths. I've had a few conversations with him since, and I've obviously read his book like most other people. So yeah, he was kind of brought in. I think, to be honest, I think with he was always going to come in, I think, at the end of the season. And midway through the season, we weren't going well. And that's when Paul Gustard kind of got moved on, who was our head coach at the time. But I think we kind of, as a playing group, created that belonging anyway. I think he's kind of come in and maybe cemented it a little bit with a few things that he's done, from my understanding. But what happened was, when our head coach got moved on, we as players, and we had kind of a leadership group. It was called a spine group, which is kind of the spine of the team, which was a mix of players of different ages, like myself and Danny Kerr, the older guys, but also Marcus Smith and Alex Donbrant, new leaders coming into the group. And we had that group already set up, but we as that group just sat down and said, look, enough's enough. We're not playing the way we want to play. We're not playing a way that's going to get the best out of this group. We've gone away from what makes Quins. So we as players just started to kind of make decisions, and that was on and off the field, of how we wanted to train, what we wanted to do in training, how the schedule was going to look. So we went from like 8th, 9th in the table to winning the whole thing. And I think with that, with us kind of making decisions, that created ownership and responsibility. We created enjoyment because we went back to what we get enjoyment out of, and that's why we either joined Quins whenever we joined Quins, or what we enjoyed coming through the academy at Quins and what we'd learned. We went back to that. We got our kind of belief and kind of swagger back, because we were playing how we wanted to play, and we believed no one could beat us when we were doing that to our best. So we kind of created that belonging ourselves off the back of that. Not like we openly were like, this is how we're going to create belonging. It would just kind of happen because we created that ownership and responsibility in that spine group. And then off the back of that, it kind of fed into the main playing group, because, while we were discussing a smaller group, we'd then, kind of bring it back to the main group and say, what do you think about this? And other people then start contributing, and that then creates more ownership, responsibility, and I guess belonging as well, because you feel like you're part of it. You feel like you're part of something. And then obviously once you start getting success off the back of that, it kind of continues, and more people want to contribute, and more people want to be part of it. So that's kind of what we did. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think Owen kind of came in as planned at the end of the season, to kind of cement that maybe with some structured words or more structure to it. And I think he now sits on the board to, I guess, kind of monitor and maintain that off the back of it. So, but yeah, Owen's a good guy. I've had a couple of Zoom chats with him. So he's been great to kind of chat about transition and stuff. And he actually encouraged me to get in touch with the FA and off the back of that, apply for this course I spoke about. So that was good to kind of have his little push, because sometimes you need a bit of a push to go with what you're thinking in your head. So yeah, it was good, and it's a good book as well. Good book to read.
In terms of coaching, you talked about, again, a lot of those holistic things, and coaches have, or teams have so many different personalities. I mean, like, you've got your introverted, your extroverted, your players that respond to challenges and sometimes scolding. Some players respond to a quiet word in private. How can coaches best manage all the different personalities? And you've been in, you've been in a lot of teams, very, very high performing teams. How do you think, or where have you seen examples of coaches being able to manage that the best?
Yeah, I think it just takes time you've got to take the time and effort to go and understand people individually, I think. And then also you've got to take the time to understand yourself and understand how you're going to understand other people. Kind of what I was referring to with Razor, Scott. He's clearly got something, but also taking the time and effort to go and learn about it and understand how to do it. And I think it's just being a human sometimes. Like, just be a person. Like, yeah, we're in a high performance elite environment, but it doesn't mean you just forget all human traits and things like that. Create that environment where you just go and have a normal conversation, and then when it's time, you switch into the other side and, right, okay, we're focused on this now, and this is where the high performance needs to happen and come in. But yeah, I think it's just understanding people and taking the time to understand people, but also understanding yourself. Again, it's easy for me to say because I haven't been lucky enough to lead an environment yet, but this is what I've kind of learned and trying to learn. And I guess you just got to learn of being able to do it, and then also making mistakes along the way as well.
Just recently, Eddie Jones has been moved on from England coach, and there was a fair bit of media attention between your relationship with Eddie that goes back to an off-field incident or an off-field scenario before the 2019 World Cup. Putting yourself in a pair of coaches' shoes, how might you have handled this scenario differently than how Eddie handled it?
It's probably easier to talk about the broader thing than narrow down to just my situation with him. I think, look, I've got huge respect for Eddie in terms of his coaching knowledge, his experience, his on the field, on the grass detail and sessions. I really enjoyed his sessions. Like, I loved his sessions, the intensity, the detail, what we were getting out of it. Most meetings, the detail, the precision of it, the effectiveness of it, his understanding of the tactical and technical elements of rugby, which he's built up over, his long career, what he's done with teams, in World Cups, things like that. Got great respect for him for that. But through my experience of him and kind of reflecting on it now, I just feel like there needs to be more of a balance for that environment. Again, like I spoke about before, having that high performance side, but also that healthy environment as well. And, looking at the amount of staff turnover there is, because he's way worse with staff by all accounts than he is with players. And, look at the turnover of players, and the stories come out about it, like mine. Yeah, it's just having that balance. I think it's just like making that environment enjoyable at times, and or a lot of times you still have that high performance and enjoy it. Having that feeling coming away from camp and desperate to go back in, getting that feeling back. You look at what those players have produced on the field, and I've kind of referenced it before. And what I've done with my column is, if you put the team he's got, and probably even the squad compared to the top teams at the moment, France, Ireland, etc., there's no way you can say that the talent that he's got wouldn't back themselves against those teams. It's just when you see them on the pitch, it doesn't look like they're producing what they're capable of doing, in my opinion. That talent, I use the example of Marcus Smith because he's very much the extreme. So you see what he does with Quins, you see how he runs a game and how he wants to be the quarterback, how he wants to express himself and how he plays, and the amount of games that they've had where they've come back from the death, running off their own line, all that sort of things. And then you see him for England. Looks to me he's playing with frustration. He's playing within himself. Example of that end of that game against New Zealand. Yes, I know they were terrible first half, but they clawed their way back into it in a 10-minute spell, and they had him on the ropes at the end. They had 14 men. In a Quinn shot, he would not kick that ball out. He wouldn't even think about that. And everyone around him in a Quinn shirt would not even think about that. But he's sat in the pocket and he's kicked it out in what's effectively a friendly game, and it just literally sapped the whole stadium. So I just look at that and I just think there's just got to be more to it. And I just think I'm just quite passionate about that balance now, that in the environment, that healthy and high performance, that having that balance now, and how detrimental it can be to people's mental welfare, and how I felt. And yes, I understand how much he's given to rugby. I appreciate that and I respect that. Anthony Watson referred to it in an article yesterday in the Times, I think, how much he's given to rugby, and you see him up the day after he's kind of been let go. He's, down at grassroots clubs coaching, which is amazing. But he's also got to understand, when he's dealing with people, I think, and again, it's easy for me to say, but I think he needs to understand as well that, these players and staff are given loads to rugby. So if I take example for myself, playing for England was everything, like everything. You can ask my family, my wife, how much commitment and dedication I put into it every minute of the day. That's what I was thinking about pretty much. What do I need to do next? Need to recover, need to be ready for this game. How do I need to play to get picked for England? What's Eddie thinking? Blah, blah, blah. Just need to ask my wife. So then off the back of that, I feel people need to be treated accordingly to how much, because everyone cares about playing for England, everyone loves it. So I don't think you need to be a certain way, which isn't right for mental health and all that sort of thing. I don't know if I'm coming across the right way. It's hard to explain, but yeah, I just think there's got to be more to it, especially when you're in charge of England, with how much is riding on it, how much people love playing for England, all those players love playing for England, how much they've grown up from young age. So I grew up from the age of 5 wanting to play for England. Like I said, it was everything to me, and I'm sure it's the same for every other player it's been in that position. There's the financial side, especially with the way the game's going at the moment. The only way you're going to make really, really good money to look after yourself in the long term is playing for England. The depth of talent they've got, you get moved on very quickly and it'll be very hard to get back in. So that creates a lot of extra thing for the players. With the staff, I know a lot of the staff and still speak to a lot of the staff now that are there or have left. And like I said, he's a lot harsher on them than he was with the players. How much some of the stuff he's done has affected them. And again, they love their jobs because they're representing England in their eyes as well, which is rightly so. They get the chance to pull on an England Red Rose without the opportunity of obviously playing. That's held in such high esteem for them because they're working at the highest level of rugby. So I think you just got to remember that sort of thing when you're speaking and dealing with people a certain way, in my opinion.
Well, obviously he's achieved a lot as a coach, and he's got the runs on the board, and he obviously came in there, and you went through that transition from Stuart Lancaster to Eddie Jones. But do you think that idea of coming in really hard and almost changing the culture into this, I guess, really hard work? I don't know, maybe you're already hard working, but whatever the change was, do you think that's got a use by date? It only lasts, 4 years or 5 years until, everybody runs out of energy in dealing with this,
Yeah.
I guess being going at 100% non-stop without ever sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you look at kind of his track record, probably does. I mean, it's only so much you can beat the stick, go that hard and have that relentlessness all the time, which is what he does have. And that's the exhausting thing physically and mentally and emotionally, I think. So, yeah, I think there's only so much a person can take of that. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's I think when he first came in, he was exactly what we needed to kind of bounce back. He had a group of players that had been through huge kind of trauma and getting knocked out of a home World Cup like that. The effect they had on all of us was unbelievable. So we had a huge chip on our shoulder and turned things around and showing people that, we weren't what they were saying we were. And, sticking two fingers up to all the people that wanted to beat us while we were very much at our lowest points in most of our careers. So he had that group. And there's a lot of guys that come through and gained experience in caps through that Stuart era, which then Eddie took on. And he was great in that kind of understanding of that high performance side and what we needed to do to take the next step up as a team, from recovery and doing that efficiently, and the detail that goes into the planning and the detail that goes into what we need to learn before we get to a session, and how we physically and mentally need to prepare as a team and also individuals, and how important preparation was in the week. I think with Stuart, I do think he did really good things with the culture, which kind of needed to change. So during his time, I just think, and he openly says, he kind of got lost as the main man in the stuff that was going on around with the media and other stakeholders, and because being, head coach for England in any sport brings a lot of stuff, not just the coaching side that you have to deal with off the field. So I think Stuart got kind of lost in that. So yeah, when Eddie came in, it was probably perfect what we needed, and it was very simple and effective game plan, and we all knew what our role and how we fit into that. It was kind of Sarri, based on Sarri's, but they had a big contingent in. They had a big group of players in that team, so that was fine. And we all knew where we fit into that. And I think he probably had I think he was what we needed at the time. But then, like I said, I think it has a lifespan, and you kind of need to evolve with the group off the back of that success. So, but then he did get to the team to the final. So who am I to say? But yeah, I think it does probably have a lifespan. It's the short answer.
We're getting to the last couple of questions, Mike. First of all, you've had a very decorated career as a player for England and Harlequins as well. What's the highlight of your career?
Well, Barbarians now. That was an unbelievable week. That was definitely up there with one of my highlights of my career, that whole week. What I learned, what I experienced, how we played the game, being involved in those games, how we won the last game, meeting all those amazing people that are so different backgrounds, different levels of playing career so far, and ages and stuff like that. So that would be up there now. Obviously winning the premiership in 2012 with Quins, there's a great environment of culture that was created there, and a mix of players from guys that have come through the academy together who loved Harlequins to other guys that had kind of joined later on, Nick Easter and Nick Evans, people like that, kind of the older sort of players. We all had respect for each other, and the strength that we brought to the team, and we enjoyed things on and off the field. And that was brilliant. We played an amazing round of rugby all the way up to the final, which was amazing. I think the Grand Slam, winning the Grand Slam win in 2016, I think. Like I said, we'd come off huge lows and disappointment from that 2015 World Cup as a group. So to kind of bounce back with that, kind of stick two fingers up to everyone. And also for me, growing up from the age of 5, watching the 5 nations back then, 6 nations now, and kind of always wanted to be involved in it, add to the history of it. We managed to do that as a team, so that was amazing to be part of. And then I think lastly, when my son was born, I always wanted to run out on a match with him, and I got to do that for my 300th game for Quins in front of a packed out stoop on a Friday night under the lights, which is always at the stoop seems a lot more special under the lights on a Friday night. I'm not sure why, just the buzz, the environment, the atmosphere always seems a bit more, on those occasions. We played Sarries, which was a big rival then. They were the top team and one we wanted to beat, London as well. So I got to do that with my son, which was amazing memory. Unfortunately, we lost the game, but I always say I won't tell him that when he's grown up. I'll just show him the picture and say,
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to know.
Show him that picture, and then show him the other picture of you holding the cup afterwards, and
there you go.
And just say it was the same day, although you might have been different jerseys,
exactly. But yeah, exactly. But then again, I got to run out with him again for the Barbarians at the Stoop, which was a Thursday night, but it kind of felt like a Friday night. Great atmosphere. Obviously spoken about how good the Barbarians was. So to do that as captain of the Barbarians at the Stoop, my old home, in front of my family, and he's now at an age, so he's 5. He's now at an age where he'll remember that and he understands what's kind of going on and can take it in more. So he'll have that memory now, whereas before he was like, God, I can't remember how old he was, maybe 2, if that, maybe younger than that. So he won't remember that apart from a photo he sees on the wall.
Yeah.
So to do that is another amazing thing.
Yeah, awesome. Last question, Mike. Where will Mike Brown be in 5 years' time, and what will you be doing?
Good question. Where will I be? I would like to be on a pathway to a leadership role, or in a leadership role in a sport. I'm not sure what. Yeah, that's what I'd like to be doing. That I enjoy would be nice, where I'm able to contribute to a sporting environment, to help people develop and help maybe a team succeed and have memories and experiences I've had as a player. That would be nice. Yeah, so we'll see. A lot of work to go before I kind of get to that level, but yeah, and also hopefully I'd have got my masters by then, which would be amazing to do that. Like, yeah. I can't even still can't think I'm going to have a master's, and because I was never academic or anything like that, and I don't think most of my teachers would believe that I'm doing one at the moment. So that'd be amazing, and hopefully by then I would have finished this FA course as well. So that'd be good to have those squared away.
Well, it'll be a great accomplishment for you when you're done. And just remind me, are you writing a dissertation, like a thesis as well?
Yeah, so dissertation's starting now. So I'm just kind of going through the journal reading and stuff, ready for the lit review. Yeah, so my topic, which isn't set in stone, but it's kind of what I'm thinking, and I've got it on my whiteboard in front of me, so I'll read it off. It's quite a mouthful. So I'm doing it on the key leadership and cultural dynamics of a high performance environment in elite sport, the athlete's perspective, because I'm a big. So we always hear, or mostly hear, about high performance environments in elite sport and what they should be and what they should look like, and how they should be built from managers, coaches, sporting directors, or practitioners, people like that, the leaders in those environments. But like I said before, I think it's very much about what the athlete needs and wants now. So to do that, I feel like you need to have the athlete's perspective, and I can't see much out there that gives that. So I saw something that Google did with one of their departments. So they basically managed to come up with a diagnostic tool that they could then measure the environment in this department. I think it was every month, by asking their employees what key kind of dynamics, allow them to work the best, flourish, develop things like psychological safety. I think was on there. I think they came up with 5 key dynamics. So, I'm gonna interview a couple of athletes from rugby, so male and female, a couple in football, male and female, to see if some key dynamics come up. Maybe they'll be different for male and female. Maybe they'll be the same. 5 or 6, and then come up with maybe a diagnostic tool to then measure an environment off the back of that. But hopefully, if I've got time after those interviews, if I come up with 5 or 6 key dynamics, then send out a survey to a number of athletes in rugby and football, male and female, to then kind of rate those key dynamics that have come out of those interviews of importance to them, maybe like 1 to 5 scale or something like that, to see if it is actually important to the wider group of athletes, to then come up with a diagnostic tool. And the reason I've done this is because, like I said, I'm quite passionate about high performance environment, elite sport. I'm passionate about the athletes having a voice, passionate about having that healthy and high performance balance. I think that would give that. And then off the back of that, maybe that in a future role or going to get a future role, if I have a diagnostic tool off the back of it, I can show what I've done and what I'd like to do in an environment, that was important to me as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. You'll know better than me if that's any good or.
No, it's good. But it sounds brilliant, mate. It sounds like a great idea. And who knows, maybe in 5 years' time, you'll be doing a PhD or something and you'll be becoming Dr. Mike.
Yeah, we'll see. 2 years of this is long enough, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, Mike, mate, I really appreciate you coming on. And I think the last time I probably saw you play in person was 2016 at the Sydney Football Stadium, where I think you guys beat the Wallabies 40. I think it was 44-40 back then. But
those three games on that tour were unbelievable. That was, to be fair, that was a good memory, a good tour, that, and to whitewash the Wallabies, who were a lot better back then, I have to say. I think they're struggling a little bit at the moment, but they were still pretty good back then with Falau and people like that. So we got 3-0 in that series. They were good games, though, high scoring, physical. Yeah, I enjoyed those.
Yeah, it was a great series, other than for me the scoreline, but for you guys would have loved it. But mate, yeah. So thank you so much for giving up some time. And I know you're a busy guy, and you've got your family and stuff that you're trying to look after as well. So I really appreciate it, mate, and all the best with the masters and the dissertation, and whatever's going to happen for the future, mate.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thanks for having me on. Enjoyed chatting.
I hope you've enjoyed this chat with Mike Brown. Some of the key takeaways for me from this conversation were having the ability to look at coaching from the athlete's perspective. Despite being a high-performing athlete, Mike still believed high-performance coaches had to have the balance of enjoyment and that highly competitive performance aspect as well. He believed that great coaches have the ability to connect and communicate effectively and understand themselves and the group as human beings first. Another aspect of professional sport that we do not spend much time focusing on is the transition into retirement. We know that many athletes struggle mentally through this period of their careers, so developing a pathway is something that is slowly building momentum in sport to assist with that transition. Mike has taken the step in his career to look at life after professional sport, and his attitude towards development and growth in a new phase of his life is a lesson for all athletes. Be prepared to get out of a comfort zone, be prepared to make mistakes, be prepared to volunteer, and make sure you learn from others. If you've enjoyed this episode, please pass it on to friends and colleagues, like it and leave a comment, and make sure you keep learning and developing in your sports role, whatever it may be. Thank you for listening.